Have you ever wondered what drives someone to commit the most heinous acts imaginable? What motivates a person to take innocent lives in a calculated, methodical manner? In this chilling video, we will take you on a bone-chilling journey as we count down the top 10 most notorious serial killers in American history. Number 10. Son of Sam. The Son of Sam is the nickname given to David Berkowitz, an American serial killer who terrorized New York City in the summer of 1976 and 1977. Berkowitz is infamous for a series of shootings that left 6 people dead and several others wounded. He primarily targeted young couples in parked cars, often using a .44 caliber revolver. What made Berkowitz even more terrifying was his habit of leaving taunting, cryptic letters at the crime scenes and his communication with the police and media, in which he claimed that he was following the orders of a demon who communicated with him through his neighbor's dog. Berkowitz's reign of terror came to an end in August 1977 when he was arrested. He later confessed to the murders and was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences in prison. Number 9. Ed Gein. Ed Gein, born in 1906 in Plainfield, Wisconsin, is a notorious American killer and body snatcher who inspired several iconic fictional characters in horror literature and film. He was arrested in 1957 and became known as the Butcher of Plainfield for his gruesome crimes. Gein was responsible for the murders of 2 women, but his notoriety primarily stems from his obsession with human remains and his bizarre activities. Upon searching his farmhouse, authorities discovered a macabre collection of human body parts, including clothing, furniture, and ornaments made from human skin and bones. Gein's case served as inspiration for characters such as Norman Bates, Psycho, Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill, the Silence of the Lambs. In 1968, Ed Gein was declared legally insane and committed to a mental institution, where he spent the rest of his life until his death in 1984. Number 8. The Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer is the pseudonym of an unidentified serial killer who operated in Northern California during the late 1960s and early 1970s. The killer earned notoriety for a series of gruesome murders, cryptic letters, and ciphers sent to local newspapers, taunting law enforcement and the public. The Zodiac Killer is believed to have committed at least 5 confirmed murders, although he claimed to have killed as many as 37 people. His victims were typically young couples in secluded areas. The killer's distinctive symbol, a crosshair-like symbol, and the mysterious ciphers he sent have become infamous. Despite numerous investigations and a great deal of public interest, the Zodiac Killer was never apprehended or positively identified, making this one of the most famous unsolved serial killer cases in history. Number 7. Donald Harvey. Donald Harvey, infamously known as the Angel of Death, was an American serial killer and healthcare worker who infamously committed a series of murders in the 1970s and 1980s. Working as a nurse's aide and practical nurse at various hospitals in Ohio and Kentucky, Harvey used his position to poison and murder patients under his care. He employed various methods, including injecting toxic substances, suffocation, and other means. His motive for these heinous acts was complex, and he later claimed to have euthanized some patients to end their suffering, although many of his victims were not terminally ill. Ultimately, Harvey was convicted of killing 37 people, but the actual number of his victims may be much higher. He was sentenced to multiple life terms in prison in 1987. He died in prison in 2017 after being attacked by a fellow inmate. Number 6. Dennis Rader. Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK Killer, is an American serial killer who terrorized Kansas for several decades. Born in 1945, Rader presented a facade of normalcy as a family man and worked as a code enforcement officer, which allowed him to blend into his community. However, beneath this outward appearance, he committed a series of gruesome murders, primarily in the 1970s and 1980s. Rader's modus operandi involved binding, torturing, and killing his victims. He often sent taunting letters to law enforcement and media outlets, detailing his crimes in chilling detail, which only added to the fear surrounding him. Despite evading capture for many years, Advances in DNA technology finally led to his arrest in 2005. Rader pleaded guilty to 10 counts of first-degree murder, receiving 10 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Number 5. Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez, born in 1960, is an infamous American serial killer and rapist known as the Night Stalker. Active in the mid-1980s in Southern California, Ramirez struck fear into the hearts of residents. He was responsible for a gruesome crime spree that included at least 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and numerous burglaries. Ramirez's modus operandi involved home invasion, where he would brutally assault and murder his victims, often using a variety of weapons. His crimes were characterized by extreme violence and sadism. He often left behind pentagrams and other occult symbols at crime scenes, contributing to the sense of terror. In 1985, Ramirez was captured by a group of citizens who recognized him, and he was subsequently convicted of his crimes in 1989. He received multiple death sentences but died of natural causes in prison in 2013. Number 4. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer, born in 1960, is one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. Active during the 1980s and early 1990s in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Dahmer is infamously known as the Milwaukee Cannibal or Milwaukee Monster. He was responsible for the gruesome murders of at least 17 young men and boys. Dahmer's modus operandi involved luring his victims to his apartment, where he drugged, sexually assaulted, and ultimately killed them. After their deaths, he engaged in acts of necrophilia, dismembered the bodies, and preserved body parts as macabre souvenirs. His actions were fueled by a deep-seated desire for complete control over his victims. In 1991, Dahmer was arrested after police discovered photographs of dismembered bodies in his apartment. He was convicted of his heinous crimes in 1992 and sentenced to 16 consecutive life terms in prison. However, he was killed by a fellow inmate in 1994. Number 3. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne, born in 1942, is a notorious American serial killer who infamously became known as the Killer Clown. He led a double life, presenting himself as a respected community figure while secretly committing gruesome crimes. Gacy sexually assaulted and murdered at least 33 teenage boys and young men in the Chicago area during the 1970s. Gacy often dressed as a clown for children's parties and charitable events, which enabled him to gain access to his victims. He would then lure them to his home, where he subjected them to sexual abuse and murder. After his arrest in 1978, the discovery of numerous bodies buried beneath his house shocked the nation. In 1980, John Wayne Gacy was convicted of his heinous crimes and sentenced to death. He was executed by lethal injection in 1994. Number 2. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was one of the most notorious American serial killers of the 20th century. Born in 1946, Bundy was a charismatic and intelligent individual who used his charm to gain the trust of his victims. He confessed to the murders of at least 30 young women in the 1970s, although the actual number may be higher. Bundy's modus operandi involved luring his victims with a variety of tactics, including feigning injuries or impersonating authority figures. He often bludgeoned or strangled his victims before engaging in acts of necrophilia. Bundy managed to evade capture multiple times, escaping from custody twice, which added to the mystique surrounding him. He was eventually apprehended in 1975 and put on trial for multiple counts of murder. Bundy's trial and subsequent death sentence garnered significant media attention. He was executed in the electric chair in 1989. Number 1. Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway, often referred to as the Green River Killer, is an infamous American serial killer born in 1949. He gained notoriety for his heinous crimes committed in the Seattle, Washington area during the 1980s and 1990s. Ridgway targeted women, primarily sex workers and runaways, and is believed to have murdered between 70 to 90 individuals, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in U.S. history. Ridgway's modus operandi involved strangulation, and he often left the bodies of his victims in remote wooded areas or along the Green River, hence his moniker. Despite evading capture for years, advances in DNA technology finally led to his arrest in 2001. In a plea deal, Ridgway confessed to 49 murders in exchange for a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Thank you for joining us on this chilling exploration of history's most infamous serial killers. If you found this video as gripping as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Inside True Crimes for more bone-chilling content. Until next time, stay cautious and remain vigilant.